What up, reader fam? Today I'm bringing you another video in my Books I've Read Recently series. It's been a while since I've done one of these and I'm excited to share my thoughts on some books I've read recently, so without further ado, let's get started. First up here I have Tempest and Slaughter by TAMORA Pierce. This was the Booksplosion book of the month for the month of July and we worked with Penguin Random House. We've already had our live show discussion for this book, so if you want to hear some spoilery thoughts, then I will leave a link to that recorded live show down below in the description. This story follows our main character Aram Draper, who is on the journey to becoming the realm's most powerful mage. We follow Aram and his two friends Orzone and Varese as they take on training to become mages. This is a very character-driven book, which is something that I really liked about it. The story really is just about following these three students at school and watching the different things that they go through, both in the magical department and also just in the life department. We watch as they develop their abilities and really come into their own when it comes to their powers, but on the flip side, we also watch things like puberty take place and making friends. You could really tell reading this book that a lot went into building up this world and magic system. It was flawlessly presented throughout the story. I think that those things were the things that I liked the most about this book. The characters themselves, the magic, the world. The one problem that I really had with this book was the lack of plot. I was like, plot, where you at? I want to be friends. The whole time reading it, I felt like there was something missing and I just couldn't put my finger on it. And by the time I got to the end, I realized what it was. It dawned on me. That little light bulb up there in the noggin went off. And that is, there was no overarching plot. We literally just follow these students in their day-to-day life at school. There's really no build up to anything. I will say though that it does feel like it's the setting ground for what's to come, but this one didn't really have any tension leading up to anything. We just reached the end and that's that. I will say that this book was probably really enjoyable for people who have read her past work. It's not a book where you have to read her past works, like you can read this and probably be satisfied because it is just an origin story, but it's an origin story of a character that people already know and love from her past work. So if you're already a fan of TAMORA Pierce's past works and this world and the characters, you'll probably die hard love this. But if you're new to this world, new to these characters, this might not be the best introduction. I could tell throughout the story that there were moments that it was like referencing different things that had happened in TAMORA Pierce's other books, or it was like alluding to certain things, which honestly just makes me want to go back and read more books by TAMORA Pierce so that I can come back to this one, reread it, and kind of get those different references. But also I want to read more of her books because I just genuinely really loved her writing style and the way that she built up her world. Without having read her past books, I would give this a 3.5 stars. I do think I would have loved it more had I read more of her other books. Next up here I have Phantom Limbs by PAULA GARNER. This book cover though. Raindrops keep falling on my head, they keep falling. Or I guess the raindrops keep falling on my book. This story focuses on a guy named Otis and his family, and they have faced a tragedy where Otis's younger brother Mason has passed away. The accidental death of his brother involves his neighbor and best friend Meg and her family, and the two families grew estranged because of it. And at some point, Meg and her family moved away. But now Meg is back and Otis is doing everything in his power to reconnect and mend these two families. This book's strongest points were its emotional punches. I'm talking about bow and arrow hit that spot on with its emotions. It really packs a punch. There's a mystery element in this story that's kind of got a build up to its reveal. A secret is being kept from the main character about his brother Mason and his accidental death and the truth behind that death. And you kind of get to a point in the story where you're just like, spit it out. Tell us what's going on here. Reveal the mystery already. We have so many moments throughout this story where different people in his life are alluding to the fact that there's more to Mason's death than Otis actually knows. But each time that these different characters try to talk to Otis about what happened, they leave us with a dang cliffhanger. It'd be like, oh, well, you know that Mason ... never mind. I need to tell you something about Mason ... but I'm gonna walk away and not tell you. Mason died because ... Actually, you know what? I'm gonna wait till we're like 3/4 of the way through the story and then I'm gonna tell you. This book showcased a character flaw that I've seen be done quite a bit in YA books recently. It's where the main guy has a lot of history with a girl, and because of that, he's very possessive of the girl. And I don't mind that being in a book as a character flaw, because unfortunately, that's a flaw that we do see in the real world. There are people who are like that. But if it's going to be a part of a character in a book, I want it to be addressed and resolved. There needs to be a solution where the character realizes that there's an issue with them thinking that way. Otherwise, it perpetuates the idea that it's okay to act that way when in fact it's not okay to be that way. Just because you have history with somebody doesn't mean you have ownership over that person. And my issue with this book is that we never got that solution that I felt we needed. Something that this book did that I liked was the way that it tackled grief. I like how it discusses how grief isn't something that you just automatically get over. It doesn't go away right away, and it's something that you're gonna have to deal with a long time after losing someone. It's something that can hang over you for a really long time. I'm kind of surprised that this book is titled Phantom Limbs. There is a character who deals with phantom limbs in this story, which if you don't know what phantom limbs is, it's a sensation that somebody who has had a body part amputated feels. They have the feeling that a limb is still attached when it's not. Otis's best friend Dara deals with this, and Otis is really there for her when it comes to this phantom limb, but I didn't really feel like it was the focus of the story, at least not enough to title this book Phantom Limbs. Overall, I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't like that the character flaw wasn't resolved. I felt like this book could have been shortened quite a bit, and also I feel like it took too long for the mystery to be unveiled. Next up, I read Under Rose-Tainted Skies by Louise GORNALL. In this book, we follow a girl named Nora, and she deals with OCD, panic attacks, and agoraphobia. These things affect her day-to-day life, and we see that throughout the story. Now, I will say this is kind of one of those cliche stories where there's a boy that moves in next door, and this girl starts having feelings for him, or as they say, boy moves in next door and changes everything. Everybody with me now. I roll. But thankfully, it's not one of those books where the boy moves in next door and fixes everything, because that's not what happens. This is an own voices novel, meaning that the author deals with some of the things that the main character deals with. So she wrote this book from experience. I can't personally tell you if the depiction of mental illness is spot on or not, because I don't deal with any of the things that this main character deals with, but I have read reviews from people who deal with things that this main character deals with, and they said in the reviews that they related to the main character and the things that she went through. So I'll leave links down below to those reviews in the description. For me, it was really nice reading this book because I feel like I really got a sense of the severity of what this main character goes through, and I have a little bit of a better understanding for what people who have OCD, panic attacks, and agoraphobia go through on a day-to-day basis. I'm not saying I know it all now, because that ain't the case, but I've had my eyes open to how heavy this can be for people who deal with this. Other things that I really liked about this book, there is a beautiful mother-daughter relationship that's showcased in this book. I feel like with YA, a lot of the mother-daughter relationships that we see are pretty unhealthy, and I get that that's a real thing. There are mother-daughter relationships where they don't see eye to eye all the time, and I get that, but it's refreshing to have a mother-daughter relationship like this where they get along, they confide in each other, and they just have this beautiful relationship. I also just loved the mom main character because she's a nerdy fangirl, and I was living for it. Like I said at the beginning, there is a bit of a romance that takes place, but it's not one where it's like, wow, all my mental illness fades away just because I fell in love with someone. It does not fall into that category, thankfully, which I'm super happy about that, because if that were the case, I'd be flinging this book out the window. It's recognizable that Nora does want to take the steps to get better, but it's not her love interest that's doing the fixing. I will admit that I wasn't a huge fan of the romance, but that's like typical with me. I'm not a huge fan of romance in YA books. For the one in this book, I was just like, it's there, I'm just gonna accept that it's happening. Lastly, I want to mention that there is a trigger warning for self-harm with this book, so be aware of that if you end up picking this one up. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Next up, I read Labyrinth Loss by ZORAIDA CÓRDOVA. I looked up how to pronounce her name, but I still think I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, so I apologize to this author. I'm really bad at pronunciations. Just watch all my videos and you'll know that. This story follows our main character Alex, who is a bruja, meaning she's pretty much the most powerful witch in her generation. What a title to carry. The thing is, she doesn't want to be a bruja, and she'd do anything to strip herself of her powers. Can't relate. If I had magical powers, I'd be casting spells all the live long day. Alex decides that she is going to try a spell that's going to strip her of her powers, but it backfires in a pretty big way. In fact, it makes her entire family vanish. So throughout this story, we follow her journey in getting her family back. I'm looking at my notes for this book and I have written down, it's like Hannah Montana, except not. You've got the best of both worlds. And I really don't remember why I wrote that down. If you're looking for a book that's like Hannah Montana, apparently this is like Hannah Montana, but not. A+ notes. Speaking of Disney Channel though, I will say that this book did remind me of like a Disney Channel original movie. Like I could really see this being adapted into a Disney Channel original movie. There were things that I liked about this book and there were things that I didn't like about it. Some of the things that I did like, I liked the Latin American culture that was present throughout the story. It was really cool seeing how that affected the terminology and seeing the way that she used the culture in order to build up this world. Another thing that I loved was the family element. I felt like there were just so many fantastic dynamics within this family, and that was so great to see, which I think me really liking the family helped with that emotional impact of completely losing the family. I do think that there were things that could have upped this book from being just okay to amazing. The world building could have used a little bit more imagery in the way that it described the world. I just couldn't fully wrap my mind around what this world looked like. I had trouble really immersing myself in it. The book takes place in Brooklyn, but then when the family is vanished, we kind of transport to another world, and I just had a hard time really picturing it. I also felt like there were some really repetitive lines used when describing different like character emotions and stuff. I kept seeing bipolar eyes being used, which I already feel really uncomfortable with that description. Am I the only one that feels uncomfortable with that description? And I feel like the line resting witch face was used quite often, which is a clever line, but I feel like it's one that shouldn't be used more than once, or it loses its initial humor. Overall, this was a fun book and I'm glad that I read it, but I don't see this book being one that's going to really stick with me. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. Lastly, I read Bob by Wendy Mass and Rebecca Stead. This story follows a girl named Livy who is visiting her grandmother who lives in Australia. It's been 5 years since she's visited her grandmother and she doesn't remember that much about the experiences she had in Australia. So when she gets there, she finds a surprise in her closet, that being this zombie-like creature named Bob. And she's a little shook, as one would be finding a zombie-like creature in their closet. But as the story progresses, she begins to remember different things about this little creature named Bob, and throughout the story they reconnect and build a new friendship, and Livy makes it her job to help Bob find his way back home. This is definitely one of those books where you start reading it and you're just like, where the heck is this gonna go? The girl found a zombie in her closet, what could happen next? A lamb in a tutu living under her bed? Wouldn't be surprised. But it actually turned into this really genuinely sweet story about an unlikely friendship, but it also talks about growth and how we can forget about these really important things that take place in our lives. Liv doesn't only forget about this zombie creature, she also forgets about experiences that she had with her grandmother and some friends that she had made. And this story is about kind of rediscovering those things and maybe even seeing how those things kind of shaped you into the person that you are today. The thing that I enjoyed the most about this story is this fairy tale feeling that kind of takes shape towards the end of the book. It's something that I didn't expect to happen with this story at all, but it really brought everything together in the end. It added a bit of magic to this already enchanting story. Overall, I really liked this book and I recommend it if you were a fan of middle grade. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. So those are some of the books that I've read recently. You guys should let me know down below in the comments some books that you've read recently, or let me know down below in the comments if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'd love to hear from you guys with your thoughts on these books. If you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I post videos frequently on this channel, so if you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and click the little bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thanks for watching guys, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye, chew.